Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Adams Brothers podcast.
Good evening, everyone.
We are joined here this evening with the Honorable Mr. Stanley Campbell, and he is here joining us today, and he is going to be running for the U.S. Senate here in the beautiful state of Florida, and he is seeking to unseat the incumbent, Rick Scott, who's been in that seat for a little minute now, and many feel that it's time for him to go. So, Mr. Stanley Campbell, welcome to the Adams Brothers podcast.
Welcome, Mr. Campbell.
Well, thank you all for having me. This is great. I know I've made the big time now.
Yes, you have. Black media is very, very important in this election. I can tell you that.
And I don't know why it takes people so long to realize the importance of black media.
Absolutely. They're going to know, but they're going to know about it after this election for sure.
Right. So, Mr. Campbell, go ahead and tell us about you. Tell us who Stanley Campbell is. Tell us about, where you went to school, your education, and all of that good stuff that you want the voters in Florida to know about you.
Well, thank you. And thank you guys for having me. And thank you for your audience tuning in tonight. So I'm Stanley Campbell. I'm going to be your next United States Senator from the great state of Florida. And if you don't know what that district is, that means it's from Pensacola to Jacksonville, all the way down to Key West, and everything in between. Every voter can vote in the United States.
Know by heart, right?
And I expect all of you to vote. So my name is Stanley Campbell. I am actually born and raised in Miami. In fact, I was just introduced last night as being born and raised in the hood. And I had to tell them, look, I was not born and raised in the hood. The project was 4 blocks away. And so where I was raised was
4 blocks from the ghetto.
Yeah.
4 blocks from the ghetto, you in the ghetto.
Mr. Campbell, hang on one second there. We just let somebody in the room, and I think they have their mic open. I don't know. I'm not sure who.
Yeah, we can hear someone in the background talking.
In the background, could you mute your microphone, please?
So for me, I'm kind of hood adjacent. I was raised 4 blocks away from the projects, and I can tell you, I loved every minute of it. So I actually went to Orchard Villa Elementary School right there in the heart of Miami, Liberty City. I was the first class to go to Charles R. Drew, and it was the only new school built into our county system. And from after 1 year at Charles Drew, I became one of the first in the state of Florida to be bused. I was bused to Miami Beach. And believe me, that means you got to walk through 3 hoods to get to school. Now you got to get on a bus for another hour and 15 minutes. But I can tell you, going out to the beach for junior high school and high school, you got the kids from the poorest area in the state of Florida going to the school with the richest kids in the state of Florida. And you got to figure out what could go wrong. And I can tell you, for me, really wasn't much to go wrong. I learned a lot about the Jewish kids, the Jewish experience, and they learned a lot about what Black excellence looks like. So from leaving Miami Beach High, I actually took that 2.8 grade point average and went to Florida A&M University. I'm a Rattler.
Rattler strike.
All the way through. And I studied physics and mathematics. And while I was there, I did a few things. I actually developed a data reduction and error analysis package for the Voyager 2. But studying physics and mathematics was pretty good because today I have 14 patents in artificial intelligence, including the large-scale models that you hear them talking about on TV. And I can tell you, I've never taken a math class outside of Florida A&M University. So there's a lot to be had by going to a HBCU. So I left there and went to work as a geophysicist with Amoco Production for a very short time. And then I took the test in New Orleans to become a pilot in the Navy, and I did very well on that test. Well, and I joined the Navy to see the world. And where'd they send me? Right back to Pensacola, Florida, the birthplace of naval aviation. So that was a very good opportunity for me because I learned how to fly airplanes. In the Navy, I flew one of the most advanced missions in the history of the Navy. I flew the TACAMO airplane, and that is the only plane that can actually talk to our submarines without them surfacing or sending an antenna. And that our ballistic missile submarines, if you take the firepower of every country, go just below France, and you got one of our submarines. And so because 12 or 15 of them can be silent and deep, you have to deal with them almost as if they're an individual country. And by virtue of the fact that I flew the airplane that could communicate with them, that made us targeted easily as well as they were. But that being the case, I started a company and did okay, raised my family in Northern Virginia. I worked the defense and intelligence space, flew Reverend Jackson, flew General Powell, flew the Mandelas, flew the Republican National Committee and the Democratic National Committees. And that being the case, I wound up leaving aviation to come back to my technology roots. And that's how I got back to Florida, because in my technology roots, my brother called me up and asked me about, when COVID hit, he said, "Look, man, we need some help here." He said, we've got a situation where over in Opelika, we got 4.5% vaccination rate, and Aventura, 3.5 miles away, we got an 84% vaccination rate. And I didn't believe it. I literally didn't believe it. And then when I looked, he sent me a Miami Herald article, and it didn't just say that. It basically said that the governor had given 21% of the vaccine over to Publix. And so I'm like, there's no Publix in our neighborhood. And then I looked even deeper in Jackson Memorial. You got to have a Twitter account to get a vaccine. There ain't nobody in our neighborhood got a Twitter account. So I literally just couldn't stop yelling at the TV. I wound up, studying and looking and seeing you can't teach Black history in our schools now. And when I went to that Jewish school, every single day from the 8th grade to graduation, you heard, if you don't remember your history, you're doomed to repeat it. And so I'm like, I just couldn't yell at the TV anymore. Went home, went over 1095 Northwest 58 Terrace, stood in the backyard, and I tried to imagine myself trying to build me. And I couldn't do it. I couldn't figure out how I could get to own 3 PGA country clubs and have the largest healthcare network in the nation, messaging to every point of sale pharmacy in the United States. I couldn't figure out how I could rebuild me. And that means I couldn't get into Florida A&M. My parents most likely couldn't even get that house, because my union job dad, he might be able to afford the house to buy it, but he couldn't afford the house to maintain it because our insurance rates are so high. So I just couldn't yell at the TV anymore. And then I just jumped in the race. And that's how I got here. And I'm going to win that race. I'm going to win it with you and with the people on this call.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
And let me just say before we get too far that thank you for your service to our country, sir. We appreciate you
Definitely
protecting our freedom here in America.
We had 2 candidates on the last 2 days that were military personnel. That is good.
We got to get more people who have served the country in some kind of way. It can be the military, it could be something else. But right now we have 8% of the people who are elected in the state, in the House and the Senate in Washington. Only 8% of them have served someplace. And now we got a situation where when I was growing up, 84% of them have served. And so that is a very dynamic thing that we have to get more people who are served in the country because it's critically important. We got people who are making decisions on things they don't even know anything about.
Right. And I don't know. I don't know if I missed it or not, but what political background do you have, Mr. Campbell?
For me, I am a Democrat. I'm born a Democrat. I was raised a Democrat. I never voted anything other than Democrat. The time that I almost voted as a Republican, I woke up. So I am born and bred Democrat. Now, when you look at my background, it looks very Republican because I'm a conservative person. I'm a businessman. I believe in less government and lower taxes. But I can tell you from that, I don't believe in no taxes. And right now, poor people can't pay taxes because they don't have money. Rich people don't pay taxes because they got lawyers and they have accountants. So the mass of us in the middle are the people who are now stuck with paying taxes. And so from that vantage point, that's how I was able to get the endorsement of the AFL-CIO, because my union father embedded into us the knowledge of that what we had to deal with. The other part of that is that same knowledge got me to flying Reverend Jackson through both of his presidential campaigns, which means that in flying him, you ain't staying at the airport. You got to make the ride. And so when we're in Chillicothe, Missouri, with the P9 workers, I'm getting arrested with him. I'm in the jail with him. When they start shooting in the jail, he's telling jokes. And then when we leave there, and we, a couple of weeks later, we had the Walmart factory where they're making stuff for Walmart, and they're not even letting the women go to the bathroom. That we had to deal with that. Right. And so that let me understand what it takes to be a union person, what strikes me, why we should never even get to a strike. What is the value proposition associated with working people being able to get a fair wage, a living wage? And these are the kinds of things that we are now in Florida, we're challenged with that. Right. And so we've got to be able to make sure that as a nation, we put people in place who understand the results of those decisions as it relates to who you elect.
Right, right. And well, let me kind of rephrase my question. Have you ever held or been elected to any political office?
I've never held an office, never wanted to hold an office, didn't even think about running for this one until I decided that I had to do something. And
what made you decide? Well, what was the deciding factor that made you want to run for the U.S. Senate?
That's a great question. When I went to that house and I imagined my 17-year-old self with my 2.6 grade point average, and that I couldn't even use that grade point average to get into Florida A&M University. My folks may not even have been able to buy that house that they bought coming out of an apartment. And even if I couldn't get into Florida A&M, what would I do, and how could I get to own everything that I own now? And I couldn't imagine, with everything that I know now, how I could get there. And then when I looked for somebody, I couldn't find one person that could beat Rick Scott. Rick Scott is the richest man in the United States Senate, and almost every dollar he got from fraudulently taking money from Medicaid system. And then he would not even extend the Medicaid expansion.
Through Obama.
750,000 people don't have insurance because of him. And because the next governor didn't put the insurance Medicaid expansion in place, he's about to put another 350,000 people. So you're going to have 1.1 to 1.2 million people, no matter who the next governor is, that have no insurance or limited insurance. That is just not right. And when I looked at who's running, Not one of them can beat him. And I'm going to beat him like he stole something because he did steal something.
Yes, he did. Yeah, yes, he did.
He should have went to prison.
Yeah, but he wouldn't answer any of the questions. He just kept
He pleaded the fifth.
Fifth
Yeah.
Amendment. He didn't want to incriminate himself, so he wouldn't answer any of the questions. And to me, that's suspect right there.
Well, believe me, he is a very intelligent man. He spent $300 million to win 3 elections, and we're going to make absolutely positively sure that he loses that $100 million that he's going to have to put in to beat me, and he is going to lose because he does not have the heart. He may have the head to manipulate the healthcare bills. He's trying to get nobody. He's trying to sunset Social Security. Social Security comes out of your pocket on your check every month, and he's trying to take that away, saying that the same way he took away your benefits in the state of Florida, your retirement benefits, having lost 40% of your retirement, he is now trying to take that away. You're not going to do that. We're not doing that anymore. I got the Broward and 15 other sheriff's departments endorsement. Everybody know about the AFL-CIO, but those Broward sheriffs last election, they endorsed him and Trump. Now, how do you move that far politically? And it was very simple. I didn't think I was going to get their endorsement, but what I told them was, consider yourself. Because you're going to go home and get around your dinner table. And now you talk to your wife about why you lost your retirement benefits and why when you retire, you have less health care than you would have. And those guys are like military folks. The police, they put themselves into the fight every day. Fire department, they're into the fight every day. They retire at 25 or 30 years because their body is so taken. And so when we now have that as a part of the equation, we absolutely have to take that into account when we start looking at, or they have to take that into account when they start looking at the fact that we're now ready to go. And so when I can tell you from me, when I decided I was going to run, all of those things were on the table. You get arrested. The legislature has absolutely given us the right that once you serve your time, you should have all of your rights back. You should be able to vote. We got a president that he endorsed that is guilty, 34 counts, but he can run for president. And this particular guy would not even let people who had the full right to vote go vote. That's absolutely crazy.
Very hypocritical right there.
Yes. Yeah.
Very much so. It's a legal system for you and a legal system for me.
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Mr. Campbell, how do you feel about foreign aid to Ukraine and Israel? I hear, and I'm not for sure, I know we give Israel billions in military aid every year, and I know we've been doing a whole lot for Ukraine. How do you feel about providing military aid and foreign aid to those two countries?
So I come to those equations from a global viewpoint, and I come from a military global viewpoint. So I can tell you where Israel sits, it's in a very dangerous part of the world. If you look at their borders, they're surrounded by what, for all practical purposes, you would call natural enemies, enemies to the state, enemies to their region. So we have to be able, as a world leader, to provide some element of support to them. Now, that being said, what I don't agree with is I am an overwhelming force. I'm a General Powell guy. We come in and we take everything down, and then we start triaging you. And when we clear you, we can push you back. but we're going to take the ground. Now, that doesn't mean we're going to kill children all day, every day. And so what we've got to do is not fight the war off the TV, but we also have to be able to hold Netanyahu and Israel accountable because they're using our assets. They're using our funds, they're using our weapons, and we've got to be accountable there. Now, the Ukraine is another one. What we've seen in the last few years is the addition to NATO. We now have 30 NATO countries. And that being said, and for the first time probably in our lifetime, all of their investments are paid in full because all of those 30 countries, they recognize the fact that Russia is a threat. And I got a son, my middle son is in the United States Navy. If we do not fund the Ukraine, we're going to be fighting the Ukraine. Today, we're fighting them with only treasure. Tomorrow, or 3 to 4 years from now, we'll be fighting them with blood and treasure. And then if you let Russia make that one move on the Ukraine, and remembering that the Ukraine is the breadbasket for most of Europe and Africa. He takes Ukraine, he owns how people in Africa eat. And so when you look at, he needs that warm water port and the fact that he needs that breadbasket, we cannot have him take that because now he's got a border with with 5 or 6 other NATO countries. So we've got to be able to support him. And now is the cheapest way for us to support him by just giving treasure. And they're going to beat him. He's lost 2/3 of his military forces, and he's lost 2/3 of his ground-based assets. So they're going to take care of that business. And believe me, this is the richest country in the world. We can afford to do that kind of business and to cover people in our neighborhoods who have been left behind for healthcare and other services.
Just to piggyback off of what my brother said, a lot of since we're talking about Israel and Ukraine right now, a lot of Americans feel that we should cut back the funds from not eliminate, but cut back the funds to Israel and Ukraine and take care of America. You know, like the homeless and the veterans and just people, ordinary Americans that need help. You know, from hurricanes and storms that tore up their homes and everything.
Disasters,
what are your thoughts on that, Mr. Campbell?
My thoughts are exactly there. I wrote a veterans bill that is published now. You can get it. The Tampa Tribune just did an op-ed on it, and it has 7 points. It says that a veteran should not wait more than 20 days before they see a doctor. My oldest brother passed away 2 years ago from COVID. He had a double lung transplant because he took a second tour in Vietnam, and that second tour, that's when they started the Agent Orange. So he lost his lungs. Now, the double lung transplant that he got was 21 years he had to wait. 21 years. When they started that noise in Arizona, 10 days. 10 days after they started all that noise, that means they just been putting his thing in the back and putting it in the back. We have enough money. When you look at going homeless people in the hood, so many of them are homeless because of mental health issues. That becomes a part of what we have to do. That's why it's so important that we have the Medicaid expansion. It is not about how much money. That's what they get us to try to think, that we don't have enough money to do this because we're doing that. You see how much money they came up with for COVID? You see overnight. And everybody's home and working and you still get a check, and there is plenty of money. What they want us to do is fight about issues while they give the Trump tax cuts. We just don't have enough payers because If we now let the Trump tax cuts stay, then where's that money coming from for roads and highways and for homeless and for healthcare and for defense and for military and all the rest? It comes from us. Those of us who go to job and go to work every day. They will play that game often. They will play that game and try to play us in a way that gets us looking at this target over here when their real target is over there. When we get the Trump tax cuts go away, that means the super wealthy will be paying almost 12% more than they pay today, and they're still going to be underpaying. But if Elon Musk could get a $56 billion check in one day and not pay virtually any of that in state income tax or federal income tax, there's an issue with something like that happening.
Yeah, and Mr. Campbell, what is there any solution to the illegal immigration of migrants at the southern border? Because that seems to be a real hot topic with the Republican Party, and a lot of people. I heard more Black people now more than ever saying that we need to do something about illegal immigrants coming into this country.
So for me, remember, I'm still that military guy. I said, and a lot of people got a little bit angry on the Democratic Party when I said any country that cannot protect its border is not much of a country. Mm-hmm. That is any country.
I agree.
And so I am a strong on the border person. But then they got a strong on the border bill that was mostly developed by Republicans. And then Donald Trump said, don't put that bill in place.
Yeah, I remember that.
But think about this now. I have a technology. It's started as a healthcare technology called MIMIRX. In the MIMIRX, you got all your medications, all your healthcare records, and all the rest of that. But what I did was we put in place in MIMIRX, we actually put in all 5 federal agencies information that if you came across that border, you can prosecute that person with all of the things that you've given them when they come across the border. Meaning you can now know who they are, know where they're going, and if you decide that you're going to keep them, you have the healthcare screening that you did for them when they first came in. And then if you got a court case, you don't have to fly them all the way, or they don't have to fly all the way back, but you know who they are and you know where they are. What we doing now is we let them come in and then they've gone by. You know, we cannot do that. We have to have some element of control. So I built that into the system. And you know how much that costs you to use it? $0. Because that's how much I'm committed to the process of, if people are coming in, we need to know who they are. And if they don't belong here, they need to be gone.
And you know what was strange? Excuse me for a moment, Mr. Campbell. You know what was strange in Trump's rally that he had in Doral? He was speaking to mostly Cuban immigrants. A lot of them we know came over here illegally in the 70s during the Mariel boat lift. Castro emptied the jail, but it was to hear them applauding him last night when he was talking about the southern border. And the hypocrisy is, I would say a good majority of them that was out there in that audience were ones that came over here illegally because of some bill that we had back during the Castro era during the Cold War.
But see,
I just wanted to make that point to piggyback on what you were saying.
Illegally, and I'm telling you that it ain't illegal because when they come in today, if you got in today, you could be in the club tonight.
Right.
If you from Cuba. Now, it's a different thing if you come from Haiti But if you come from Cuba, you at the club tonight and you got a work permit you could go start work tomorrow.
With the housing voucher and food stamps.
Yeah.
There
If
you
you're a
go.
Haitian, you at Chrome detention camp.
Right.
You're at Chrome detention camp.
So if
and
you're gonna
that's what
treat immigrants, treat them all the same. You know, I don't
And
care if you're
back in
from
the
Haiti
day,
or Cuba or Venezuela or wherever. You treat them all the same. You don't let them in because Cubans tend to vote more Republican, so they tend to let them in here more.
Well, what I say is there's 21 million people who live in the United States in the shadows. 21 million. We have got to get them legal first before we continuously letting masses of people in. There is a legal way to come in,
Right.
and we need persons with certain and specific jobs, including picking tomatoes. But what we've got to be able to do is to control that. What we've got to be able to do is not throw people out of the country who only know this country as the place of their birth and the place that they live. And so believe me, I am thoroughly convinced that when I get to the Senate, that I'm going to be able to put a system in place that will actually positively get us to the point of being able to deal with this 21 million. And literally, I really don't care how they vote. What I care about is how they pay taxes. What I care about is how they live. What I care about is how we can know who's in our country, why they're here, and if that means that they get a pathway to citizenship, then so be it. But at the end of the day, we can't just have them cut our grass or mind our babies, and then we don't even know who they are. And they can't live here and not have all of the pieces of what it takes to be an American. That's important.
And Mr. Campbell, this is my final question for me. Months ago, you had accused the Democratic Party of racial insensitivity. Can you touch on that a little bit if you can?
Well, I can tell you, it wasn't accusing. I was evidencing to the rest of us because they know what they did. So the Democratic Party took a woman from Miami, picked her, and now is shoving her down our throats. They picked her and shoved her down our throats. And then we go to Tampa and they bring the president and let him say, now we have an election. I took a sworn oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States, which says that I should have the right to vote. I should have the right to run. She should also have the right to vote and to run because she got her citizenship coming from a different place. But we should be able to run on equal ground. When you take the president of the United States and bring him in the room with me and have him endorse her with the full throat of the entirety of the White House press corps, and then you go to the Democratic convention, and then I can't even talk. My wife is the biggest fiduciary in the history of the United States, and they don't even recognize my wife.
Yeah,
The
that's
Democratic
sad.
Party. And then the mantra is democracy will not end on my watch. Well, I can tell you, of those people, I was the only one who was taking the sworn oath to support and defend the Constitution. And I took it again in the intelligence space, and I took it again in other places at TSA. And I can tell you, democracy will not end on my watch. They are going to have me run. I am going to beat their candidate, and then I'm going to beat Rick Scott because he did steal something. And I can tell you, whether they join me or not, I am going to beat their candidate.
Okay, you said that you're going to beat Rick Scott, but and you sound very confident about that. But I want to back up a little bit to the last election when Val Demings was running against Marco Rubio. And black media, us as black media, we tried to reach out to Val Demings. And we, my brother and I, we both believe that had Val Demings campaigned more here in South Florida, Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach counties, which is a Democratic stronghold. I know Dade County turned red the last election and everything, but had she campaigned more here, we think she would have got a lot more votes. I think she lost by almost a 1.4, 1.5 million votes. So
she lost by probably 3 times what she should have lost by. It was very difficult for her to win, but she lost by a lot, and she had $20 million more money. I studied her race. I know exactly how she lost. She let them frame her as the police coming into our neighborhood. And then every time she came into our neighborhoods, she looked like the police. And so what winds up happening is that doesn't work for us. But I can tell you, for me, I've worked with the defense, intelligence, the police, and everybody else. I work for people. And for me to be able to get the endorsements that I got, it is because the people have picked me. That's why I'm going to beat their candidate and the people for Rick Scott. I apologize. I have to get going, guys.
Okay.
And I will come back. I promise you I will be back. I will be back as often as you will have me. I got an entire film crew out there, and they're now I gave them they gave me a few more minutes than I actually had. But
in 30 seconds, in 30 seconds, tell the viewers out there why they should elect you as the next U.S. Senator here from Florida. 30 seconds.
First of all, I'm born, I'm bred, I'm raised, I'm educated, and I'm professionalized in the state of Florida. I know who you are because I am you. I have absolutely stepped on every rung on the ladder to success. And I can tell you, I don't see how I could get back there. And what we've got to do is bring Florida to the point that every child can get there, that every adult who is on Social Security doesn't have to worry about losing it, that people who need health care can actually depend on the fact that if they don't move on the on Medicare expansion, then I'm going to be pressing my wife and her friends at HHS to expand the Affordable Care Act. I am Stanley Campbell. I am running for the United States Senate, and I need your help. And so if you go to stanleyforflorida.com, that's stanleyforflorida.com, leave some money, volunteer, do whatever, but you got to get in and you got to vote. So thank you all, and thank you for having me.
Thank you and good luck. And we just want to promise that when you win, you come back on and support black media.
I'm going to come back before I win. I'm going to come back while I'm beating them. Right. So thank you guys. I'm telling you.
Get us that commercial. Yeah. Get us that commercial.
Yes. I gotta get my brother on so we can go brother to brother. We're gonna do this thing. Right?
All right. We've been talking to Mr. Stanley Campbell. He's running for U.S. Senator here in Florida. Thank you, Mr. Campbell. We know you got to get going, so good luck to you, sir.
And have a good evening.
And have a wonderful rest of your evening.
Thank you.
You're welcome.